A ridiculous thing I've heard from sequel fans after seeing the resurgence of the prequels, and after seeing the mountain of hate their precious movies have gotten, have resorted to trying and make us feel bad by guilt baiting us. In Gold Man's video condemning the sequel decanonization idea, he spoke about all the kids that will hypothetically grow up loving the sequels being heartbroken when their beloved movies turn out to be non-canon. Boo-hoo. Linkara also said something similar when he said that kids will grow up with the sequels as their first and favourites.
No, they won't!
This idea that the sequels will have a resurgence is absurd and comes from a lack of understanding on why prequel resurgence happened. So let's talk about it. First, and perhaps the main point to why this nonsense about the sequels being loved in 10 years is highly doubtful, is because the sequels did not resonate with kids. In case someone's going to tell me that we'll have to wait a couple of years to see whether or not I'm right, we really don't. Because people who say kids today will grow up with the sequels as their beloved Star Wars movies have not been paying attention to what kids actually thought about the sequels. Like to Gold Man and Linkara, have you seen the abysmal toy and merch sales of the sequel trilogy? The sequels, aside from maybe a few products, failed to sell the toys, and even when the price on the toys became extremely cheap, they still wouldn't sell. The cheapest Star Wars Black Series action figures I've seen on eBay are mostly either sequel trilogy toys or toys relating to Rogue One or Solo. That proves right off the bat that the sequels utterly failed to resonate with the core demographic, the audience Star Wars was originally aimed at. And get this, Brown Man and Linkara, the prequels did the one thing the sequels couldn't. The merchandise actually sold because the prequels resonated with kids. The OT fanboys may have been whining, but the actual target demographic that was supposed to see the movies ate up the toys, the merchandise, the Jar Jar lollies, played the video games, and everything. I know this because when I was at school, everyone that gave a damn about Star Wars loved the prequels as well as the originals. We saw it as a complete story. And sure, we'd like another Star Wars movie because who wouldn't? I was imagining that the next Star Wars movie would be something incredible. Like maybe a film adaptation of The Force Unleashed, for example, because that game was batshit and so fucking cool. So the prequels were always hated narrative is utter dog shit. Prequel resurgence happened because people like me grew up. Prequel resurgence started to happen as soon as I was able to think critically. Kids who grow up with these movies and love them, and then having the rude awakening by the mainstream idiots. I certainly got the games, the toys, the action figures, the merchandise, and what have you. Also, I saw The Force Awakens when I was 13, and even when I still thought it was great, I wasn't one to buy any of the merchandise related to the sequel trilogy. It was all prequel and original trilogy shit. Then people point out that the film's a rip-off and stuff, and I changed my mind on a whim. Even if I couldn't properly explain why I changed my mind at the time, I realized that that film, while enjoyable, was a dumb film that made no sense. With hindsight, we know that The Force Awakens sucked because it doomed the next two films because of the mystery box gimmick, in which J.J. Abrams hooked the audience in with questions that were never going to have a satisfying payoff. Just make the audience go crazy with questions. But of course, that led to the audience coming up with every possibility imaginable based on what little information we were given. That film was fucking empty. I haven't said this enough, but the sequels were made to be hyped up until they were released, and meant to be watched specifically at the time they came out in theaters, instead of being timeless. What I mean by that is the fact that The Force Awakens, because it's like a crappy TV show, is going to have a complete disconnect with the previous two films. Despite taking place immediately after, The Last Jedi doesn't feel anything like The Force Awakens. It's a completely different movie, and for what I've seen, I haven't heard about any kids who actually liked it. I mean, there was this one guy who told me his daughter or niece, I can't remember which, loved the movie. And then when I asked him about her prior watching experience, he told me that she hated the original 6 movies. Pretty much the only kids who will grow up and love these movies are the ones who will be exactly like the sequel fans today. Pretentious, left-leaning, and unaware of basic Star Wars lore. Many sequel fans deny that their political leaning had anything to do with their enjoyment of The Last Jedi. And if that was true, they'd understand why people don't like the movie, instead of going on about how they can't understand why this woke movie was mass hated. Now let's apply this to kids. Do you think kids will give a single fuck about what The Last Jedi is trying to promote? Pretentious themes, political messages, forced representation, cause last I checked, the Rose Tico and Holdo toys are still in stock cause they didn't make a single cent from kids. If I'd have to guess, they'd probably find The Last Jedi incredibly boring. After all, it's a movie that only appeals to specific people. And again, the only kids I've heard who actually like The Last Jedi were not Star Wars fans to begin with. That's the big dilemma with the sequels. They fail to resonate with kids because they don't appeal to kids. The Force Awakens appealed to the old OT fanboys who wanted their rigid view of Star Wars back. The Last Jedi appealed to left-leaning woke dumbasses who called other people racist misogynists for not liking the movie, and The Rise of Skywalker appealed to no one. As you can see, the sequels are certainly not made for the core demographic, like they should have been. That's actually made me realize that the sequels are even worse now. Also, can we just appreciate how much sequel fanboys are relying on a fresh supply of sequel fans in the future to back them up and expressing utmost confidence that they can predict the future even though they can't even understand the past properly? Yeah. Also, this point isn't even a proper defense of the movies themselves. It's just fans gambling and hoping that future fans will be on their side. If anything, the shit that will actually be talked about in the future will probably be the Disney Plus crap. That includes The Mandalorian, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and other shows in the future. The Mandalorian I can actually see resonating with kids because girls will probably find Grogu cute, and boys will dress up as Mando with the Nerf gun based on his blaster rifle. To be thorough, The Mandalorian is a mediocre mess, but it's infinitely more marketable than the sequel trilogy. At this point, the sequels will be overshadowed by other stuff from Disney's library of products, and the sequels will just exist. That's my prediction on how kids will see things. I have no idea what kids will think when this video becomes a decade old, amongst others, but that's why I'm not putting all my eggs in one basket. The sequels being loved in 10 years is such a ridiculous, pathetic excuse, and it really needs to stop. It's not actually defending the movies in any way. It's just guilt-baiting people like me to cease the criticism, because think of the fans who don't exist at this point, who will grow up with these shitty sequels. Also, something else to think about. Movies you can enjoy as a kid can wear off when you're older. The Cat in the Hat, that shitty movie from 2003, I thought was great, but it's worn off now and I see it for being crap. Not terrible, cause there's a few redeeming qualities, but certainly not a good movie. Did you ever consider that being a possibility, guys? I've made my point. I highly doubt the sequels will become beloved movies in the following years, because there are no fans of the sequels who happen to be kids. The toy sales were enough to prove my point, but I need to shut down this shit as quickly as possible because I'm sick of hearing it. I'm JJ Plagiarisms. And until next time, what are stories about mystery boxes?
We found you hiding, we found you lying, choking on the dirt and sand. Your former glories and all your stories, dragged and washed with